A young girl's incredible plea exposed, she asks a millionaire CEO for a job to save her sick mom. Emily stood outside the towering glass building, nerves twisting like knotted ropes in her stomach. Today, everything depended on this meeting. Her mother's health was fading, and the expenses were mounting like heavy weights on her shoulders. Her once sparkling childhood was now clouded with anxiety, each moment filled with the fear of losing her mother. A lump formed in her throat as she recalled the doctor's words, "The treatment is becoming unaffordable." It was time to face Mr. Johnson, the cold-hearted millionaire whose wealth could change everything. Taking a deep breath, Emily pushed through the revolving doors. The air felt different inside, sharp and sterile. The receptionist glanced at her, eyebrows raised, questioning whether a girl her age had any business here. Ignoring that skepticism, she approached the desk, heart racing, and asked to see Mr. Johnson. Minutes felt like hours as she waited, her thoughts spinning. Would he even listen? Could someone so powerful ever care about a kid like her, or was she just wasting her time? When the secretary beckoned her in, the opulence of the office nearly knocked the wind out of her. Golden accents, plush furniture, and the view that sprawled out like a postcard contrasted sharply with the cramped space of her home. Mr. Johnson was seated behind a colossal desk, fingers steepled, his expression frozen. Suddenly, the enormous space felt crushing, and Emily's voice trembled. She caught herself, straightening her back, forcing the words out about the love her mother had poured into their family, how her spirit fought against illness even as the medical bills threatened to drown them, but as Emily spoke, doubt hung in the air like a storm cloud. She could see the skepticism unfold across Mr. Johnson's face. Did he think her story was no different from the others he had encountered? The countless requests he'd likely dismissed. The sharp pang of class disparity coursed through her, making her question the worth of her own plea. Fear wrapped around her heart, constricting. What if he dismissed her without a thought? Before she could lose that fleeting glimmer of bravery, she recounted how she had been working after school, babysitting for neighbors and saving every dollar to help. And yet, with each confession, the conflict within her raged. What was she, a girl with a part-time job, doing in front of a tech CEO? She felt both tiny and monumental at the same time, one minute a fighter, the next engulfed in despair. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. It was then that Emily saw a tiny crack in the armor Mr. Johnson wore so well. For a moment, she thought she might bridge the gap caused by their different worlds. She considered suggesting she could work for him, hoping to create a lifeline that could save her family. But as she proposed this idea, doubt seized her once more. Would he ever acknowledge the sincerity behind her words, or would she be just another girl searching for a way out? The intense silence was shattered by voices from a nearby conference room, jolting Emily back to reality. What had she hoped for? A miracle? As she looked up into Mr. Johnson's eyes, anxiety swirled. Would he see her? Would he help? She felt the weight of her dreams bearing down on her, mixing with the harsh reality outside those office walls. There they stood, two worlds colliding, and in that moment, she understood the urgency of her plea, but also the complexity it entailed. The fate of her family balanced precariously on the edge of uncertainty. Would her courage be enough to reach him? The impending answer remained tantalizingly out of reach. The silence stretched as Emily gripped the edge of the chair, its cool leather and sleek lines contrasting sharply with the heat building in her cheeks. Mr. Johnson's brow furrowed as he leaned back slightly, a gesture that could either signal contemplation or dismissal. The very uncertainty of his reaction made her pulse quicken, each beat echoing the desperate hope she had carried into this room. "Look, Emily," he began, his tone skeptical yet surprisingly soft, you think just asking for a job will solve everything? There are thousands of kids who would think the same way. His eyes narrowed slightly, and Emily felt the implication, like a punch to the gut. The world did seem to favor the privileged, and here she stood, a mere girl clutching at straws in a sea of indifference. She had always prided herself on her tenacity, her ability to rise above the noise around her, but in this moment, vulnerability washed over her like a wave. "I'm not asking for a handout," she shot back, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm asking for a chance. I can rearrange your filing system or help with customer emails. I can do whatever it takes." Each word felt like a lifeboat tossing in a storm, but courage propelled her. What was left to lose? The possibility of saving her mother wove its way into her resolve, and she could not allow that dream to fizzle out. Demar. Johnson peered intently at her, regarding her not just as a plea but as a battle raging behind her eyes, a fight for survival. "What do you know about our business, Emily? This is no charity." She took a moment, letting his questions sink in. All those evenings spent poring over the computer, catching up on the latest trends in technology, the feeling of exhilaration when understanding just one more concept, it wasn't just idle curiosity. It was a power she had yet to fully acknowledge. "I've been learning about digital marketing," Emily offered, the words spilling out of her like pent-up secrets. "I know how to manage social media pages and interact with customers. I've even helped my school's club get their stuff online." She realized, as she spoke, how potent that knowledge felt. Mr. Johnson's expression softened ever so slightly, and she saw the gears turning behind his eyes. "What school, though? No offense, but your education doesn't compare to the kind of experience my team has." "Eastwood High," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, but inside, she stood taller. She had to project confidence, despite the weight of his condescension. Was it her age that made him second-guess her? Possibly, but she would not let that define her. "But that doesn't mean I can't contribute. I promise I can work hard, and I'm willing to learn." "Willingness is one thing. Competence is another," he replied, his skepticism returning, but now she sensed a glimmer of reconsideration. The weight of her mother's health hung on the edge of every word spoken between them. "I'll do it for free, if that's what it takes. Just to prove to you that I can be of value," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. Would he understand the depths of her commitment? He hesitated, a flicker of conflict crossing his face. Emily felt the gears of his mind, and inwardly, she steadied herself. "You understand that this is high stakes and highly competitive?" He challenged, but it sounded different this time, not just a dismissal but a challenge of sorts. "Your commitment, if recognized, won't change overnight." "I understand completely," she replied, her pulse racing from the thrill of the possibility ahead. But despite her burgeoning confidence, she understood that this moment could spiral in so many directions. Would he take her seriously? Would he see her not just as a plea for help but a budding professional ready to dive into the fray? "Fine," he said finally, standing up, recalibrating their dynamic. "You have 1 week to showcase what you can do. Consider it a trial run." Joy mingled with fear inside her, this opportunity for growth colored by the realities of her mother's condition and the impeding heaviness of potential failure. The door was open, but how far could she push through? Would her learning curve coincide with the urgency of her mother's needs? "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. You won't regret this," Emily blurted out, heart racing, but a seed of doubt, of what awaited her beyond this next hurdle, flickered in her mind. What should she prioritize? As Emily left the office, she felt a twist of anxious anticipation. The battle lines had shifted. She was no longer just a girl pleading for help, but an individual attempting to forge her path. As she stepped out into the bustling street, a thought gripped her: if this time next week didn't yield results, would she be able to face the harsh truth of her limitations? Her heart sank at the thought of failure, but there would be no backing out now. The stakes had risen, a heart-wrenching truth battling the faint hum of hope, and she knew she was on the edge of something that could define her, a moment that might ultimately shape not just her trajectory, but the fate of her family. What challenges lay ahead? What discoveries awaited her in the fast-paced world of business? In that moment, she knew she had to face them head-on, even if it meant wrestling shadows of self-doubt lurking in her mind. The following days unfolded like a blur, each one wrapping Emily tighter in the web of urgency she had woven for herself. With the challenge set before her, she struggled to maintain focus amid the insistent clamor of self-doubt that echoed in her mind. Mornings turned into late-night study sessions, hunched over her laptop, navigating the intricate world of digital marketing. With every piece of content she created, she unearthed a wellspring of knowledge she hadn't fully appreciated before. Her determination was palpable, fueled by the necessity to prove herself, not only to Mr. Johnson but to the relentless voice inside her that urged her to act against her fear. The heat of her mother's illness pressed down on her, reminding her that stakes had never been higher. She couldn't afford to fail. Her family's future hinged on this. The first challenge arose early, delivering an unexpected jolt of anxiety. As she sat at her cluttered desk, she opened her email to find a message from Mr. Johnson. It simply stated that he wanted to meet again to discuss her plans. Panic seized her momentarily, her palms became clammy as she stared at the blinking cursor on her screen. She quickly drafted a response, detailing her ideas for social media engagement strategies she could execute if given the chance. But even after sending it, an unshakable doubt gnawed at her. Was it enough? In the following hours, a swarm of strategies filled her mind, the various campaigns she had read about suddenly buzzing with relevance. She strategized like a commander preparing for a battle, plotting out schedules, potential posts, and creative visuals, transforming her anxiety into actionable plans. Days of relentless effort stretched behind her, and her confidence began to creep back, reclaiming territory that had once belonged to doubt. One evening, as she typed in the reflective glow of her laptop, the realization struck her: she had developed a competence she hadn't known was lurking beneath her surface. The knowledge felt empowering, a tangible act of defiance against the pressures surrounding her. She spent hours crafting her first real campaign proposal, focused on leveraging Instagram to connect with their target audience. The more she worked, the more her vision crystallized, revealing her instinctive flair for the subject. "It's like I'm finding pieces of myself," she muttered to her reflection one night, examining her wide eyes of resolution. The day of their meeting arrived swiftly. Seated across from Mr. Johnson again, the room felt charged, the atmosphere thick with potential. She laid out her proposal, each slide projected on the screen like a beacon, illuminating her ideas clearly. The notes she had taken acted as her armor, shielding her from uncertainty. Mr. Johnson leaned forward, attentively dissecting her presentation. The way he furrowed his brow revealed he was wrestling with conflicting thoughts. Part of her longed for instant validation, yet another part regained understanding that success didn't always unfold in an instant. When he finally spoke, Emily held her breath, every second a world teetering on the edge of an abyss. "You've done your homework, but tell me why I should trust someone with no formal experience to handle our brand?" In that moment, she rested her palms on the table, feeling the cool surface send a tremble through her veins, grounding her. "Because I understand what it's like to connect with a community. What matters to people and what they respond to," she asserted firmly. "I'm hungry for this opportunity, and I won't let you down. I'm not just asking for your trust, I'm prepared to earn it through hard work, creativity, and results." His gaze intensified, weighing her resolve against his skepticism. The silence lingered between them, thickening with unvoiced possibilities. She caught a glimpse of what lay beyond her future unfolded like an unfurling flower, each petal a commitment to becoming stronger, smarter, and braver. As he finally spoke, Emily could sense the shift. "Very well, you have my attention. Let us see what you make of it." She felt like the ground had shifted under her, the potential for failure still looming, yet the taste of opportunity lingered on her tongue like a promise. But as this new chapter began, the urgency in her heart reminded her, would she be able to harness her newfound potential and deliver results swiftly enough? The clock was ticking, and time was not on her side. The first few days of her newfound responsibility were both thrilling and terrifying. Emily stood at her desk, her laptop open and her to-do list glaring back at her like an ominous wall of ambition. This was not merely a collection of tasks, it was her battleground now. With each completed item, she hoped to forge a clearer path to proving herself in a world that seemed stacked against her. The anxiety that once threatened to paralyze her began to morph into a frenetic energy. She wasn't merely handling the pressure, she was channeling it. Each morning, Emily stared into the mirror and noted the determination in her gaze. The shadows under her eyes served as badges of honor, reminders of sleepless nights spent studying trends and analyzing competitor strategies. She immersed herself in webinars and tutorials, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. Although she had once felt overwhelmed by the intricacies of digital marketing, her passion for understanding her audience and her desire to create meaningful connections sparked a fire within her. The clock was ticking, but so was her resolve. She knew from previous discussions with Mr. Johnson that her success wouldn't come from merely executing ideas, she needed to innovate. Every hour spent on market research paid dividends as she understood the nuances of customer engagement. She began to notice patterns, how emotions and sentiments swayed purchasing decisions. With newfound clarity, she crafted content that spoke not just to potential customers but also mirrored their dreams and struggles. On the fourth day, a moment of realization seized her, a piece of wisdom often overshadowed by self-doubt. Emily was the voice of those seeking connection in a fractured digital world. She wasn't merely a novice trying to fit into Mr. Johnson's mold, she was bringing her unique experiences forward. The inception of her first full campaign was pivotal. Titled Community Stories, it transformed the conventional sales pitch into a vibrant narrative inviting users to share their own experiences related to the brand. It was an idea she believed could resonate. Then, the inevitable arrived to present her campaign early. The opportunity felt like a double-edged sword. It came with the allure of showcasing her hard work but brought along the looming dread of failure. The flashy confidence that had buoyed her earlier faltered as she approached Mr. Johnson again. Each step felt heavier than the last, accompanied by an internal dialogue that vacillated between certainty and doubt. Just remember what you believe, she quietly reminded herself, though her heart raced. Once seated, she glanced at him, noticing his fingers poised over the keyboard, the beam of his attention undivided but unreadable. With a steady breath, Emily dove in, revealing her campaign goals with fervor. As her pitch unfolded, she could see the spark of curiosity flicker in his gaze. But just as she thought to bask in that approval, Mr. Johnson's skepticism resurfaced again. "I see where you're going with this, but what makes you think your approach will actually translate to engagement?" His brow furrowed, testing her resolve. Beneath the polished sheen of her confidence, a wave of vulnerability crashed against her. Faced with his gaze, she sensed the stakes exponentially rising. It wasn't just the campaign at risk, it was her chance to reclaim her narrative, to unlock the path for herself and for her family. To answer, she delved deep into her understanding of empathy in marketing, drawing parallels between the stories shared in her community and how those narratives could elevate their brand voice. The standing silence grew heavy, punctuating her words with contemplation rather than critique. "Everyone has a story worth sharing," she concluded, her voice steady despite the tumult in her chest. The silence stretched painfully long, and then finally, Mr. Johnson spoke, his tone softening. "Fair point, Emily. But ideas are easy, execution is where most crumble. Prove to me and yourself that you can follow through." As she left that meeting, buoyed, yet burdened by the expectations laid before her, an insistent thought nested tightly in her mind: she had her work cut out for her. How would she bridge the gap between keen insights and tangible results? With no safety net in sight, Emily prepared to step into the unknown, believing in her resolve and instincts as never before. The clock was still ticking, but for the first time, she sensed the power of the upcoming challenge could reshape her destiny. And as she opened her laptop that night, ready to strategize her next steps, an email notification flickered on the screen. It was from Mr. Johnson, and the subject line sent a chill down her spine: "Let us talk about execution." Emily's heart raced as she clicked on the email from Mr. Johnson. The words, "Let us talk about execution," flashed at her like a warning signal. She inhaled slowly, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. This was the moment she'd prepared for, and yet anxiety tightened around her resolve. What did execution mean to him? She needed to know how to translate her ideas into actionable steps, something tangible that would silence any lingering doubts. Over the next few days, Emily immersed herself deeper into research, diligently analyzing successful campaigns, their timelines, milestones, and outcomes. With each discovery, she noted not just the what but the why behind them. Understanding the purpose, the emotional triggers, the stories behind the stories was becoming essential. She was learning to think like a strategist, connecting dots in ways she hadn't considered before, but this time, it came with a scorecard. As the day of their meeting approached, she devised a presentation that detailed not just the concept of community stories but pivoted to execution, breaking it down into phases: ideation, content creation, audience testing, and rollout. Each phase, she articulated, was a crucial step in transforming her vision into reality, mapped out with specific deadlines and expected outcomes. The night before the meeting, however, insomnia crept in, urging her to confront her fears head-on. Beneath the flickering light of her desk lamp, she replayed the potential interaction in her mind. What if Mr. Johnson found gaps in her strategy? What if he dismissed her entirely? Questions bolstered by doubt spiraled until one certainty emerged: she had to own her narrative, not only of the campaign but of herself. She arrived at the office early, heartbeat quickening as she took her seat across from Mr. Johnson. This time, there was an unyielding sense of possibility. As they began, she felt the tension shift. She wasn't just another employee presenting an idea. She was the architect of an innovative response to market demands. "I appreciate your work on this, Emily," he began, his tone slightly warmer than before. "But execution is where it all lives or dies. Walk me through your plan." With clarity and confidence, she outlined her phases. As she detailed her strategy, she could see Mr. Johnson's furrowed brow soften gradually. Engaging him with questions about his insights created dialogue, rather than simple presentation. When she reached the end, she watched as a new understanding flickered in his steely gaze. "I like your approach," he nodded, allowing for a moment of potential agreement to linger. "But we need to differentiate. What makes your execution unique?" Panic danced at the edge of her thoughts, but she planted her feet firmly in the ground. "My narrative isn't just about the brand. It's about building an emotional bridge with our audience. Community engagement isn't a marketing gimmick, it's a chance to forge connections." Mr. Johnson leaned forward, intrigued but not entirely convinced. "Fair point. But connection alone won't convert. Discuss your metrics and how you'll track success afterward." This was where she felt smooth confidence shift back into vulnerability. Metrics seemed sterile compared to her idea's organic spirit, but she had prepared for this. She took a breath and shared a range of measures. User engagement rates, feedback loops, conversion rates tied to shared stories, all designed to translate emotion into actionable data. His brows raised. "That's more like it. It seems you've thought this through. Show me how you can adapt this plan in real time and anticipate the customer's evolving interests, and I might be convinced." Her heart swelled as the conversation shifted. Emily was not merely defending a concept, she was forging a partnership for a vision that intertwined with her own values of empathy and connection. The meeting concluded with a tentative promise to develop the campaign further, but beyond that, she felt she had asserted not just her professional potential but her very identity. As she returned to her desk, adrenaline pumping through her veins, her phone buzzed with a notification, a news alert about a competitor launching a similar community-focused campaign. Suddenly, fear mingled with exhilaration. Would they steal her thunder? With her next challenge looming, Emily knew she would need to solidify her ideas and fast. The moment to innovate and execute was upon her, and as she glanced back at her open laptop, the weight of what came next sank in. She was ready, but would it be enough? And as she prepared her next steps, a thought hung above her, echoing a question she dared not speak: could she actually pull this off before someone else seized her vision? Emily sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating the depths of her focused expression. The news about the competitor's campaign gnawed at her mind, an unwelcome distraction that clouded the clarity she had fought hard to achieve. She needed to act, to differentiate herself from mere imitation, and the weight of expectation rested heavily on her shoulders. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she rifled through her notes, fueled with an urgency to elevate her original concept. The Community Stories initiative could be more than a focus group, it could become a movement, positioning her as a thought leader in the industry. Yet, the realization that she needed to dig deeper pushed her anxiety to the forefront again. What were the elements that could make her vision truly stand out? As familiar phrases like engagement and metrics flitted through her mind, she decided not to get trapped within the confines of conventional marketing wisdom. She leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes, and took a moment to meditate on the core of her idea. Authenticity. The idea of authenticity opened a floodgate of possibilities. Emily envisioned highlighting individual stories, real people using her brand in meaningful ways. It wasn't just about having a platform, it was about amplifying voices that would resonate with their target market. She contemplated potential partnerships with influencers known for their genuine connections with audiences, amplifying the campaign's reach while maintaining its heart. She could create short video profiles capturing life changes brought about through simple acts that her brand facilitated. This would not only humanize the brand but also empower its customers. Each story would possess an emotional weight, seamlessly drawing in viewers and persuading them to become part of the narrative. With renewed vigor, she crafted an outline of her next approach, breaking it down into strategic touch points, authentic storytelling framework, selection of real users, interviews, and production timelines. Each element was not merely a checklist item, they were stepping stones to build a solid foundation for the campaign's future. As hours melted away, a knock at her office door jolted her focus. It was Nora, her colleague, carrying a stack of folders, her brow furrowed in concern. "Emily, have you seen the latest figures? We're running behind on outreach." The reminder of the metrics created an uneasy knot in Emily's stomach. "I'm working on something that could change our trajectory, just give me a little more time," she said, her voice steady, though internally she wrestled with doubt. "You can't rely solely on an idea, especially with the competition breathing down our necks." "We need results," Nora countered, her tone friendly yet firm. Emily felt the weight of Nora's words. Here was a pivotal moment where she had to confront her own expectations. Was she merely creating a concept to appease her own ideals, or did she have the fortitude to back it with measurable outcomes? The scrutiny of her colleagues, the market, and herself was intensifying. "Leave it to me," Emily replied, the edge of conviction rising within her. "I'll make sure this resonates with something tangible." As Nora walked away, affording Emily the solitude she craved, she felt an electric pulse of determination coursing through her. This was about more than just executing a campaign. Every decision she made now carried weight, advocating for her aspirations and molding her professional identity. Sitting in silence, the fierce determination battled against her lingering doubts, and fresh questions surfaced like shadows swirling around her ambition. Could these emotionally compelling stories translate into numbers, transforming qualitative feelings into quantitative success? With a newfound focus, Emily began drafting pitches to potential collaborators, her confidence simmering as she consolidated her plan into a compelling narrative on its own. She had discovered the unique elements that would allow her initiative to flourish, just as she reached for her coffee. A ping from her phone broke her concentration again. Another news alert flashed on the screen: revolutionary influencer-led marketing campaign poised to reshape the industry. The realization that others were already executing similar ideas hit Emily like a cold wave. You either innovate or risk irrelevance. Suddenly, a fierce clarity arose. She needed to not only execute but also reimagine how to fuse her vision with proactive actions, ensuring that she led rather than followed. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, illuminating her workspace in a fiery glow, Emily reminded herself that she was ready for this fight. But the path ahead was steep, with unknown challenges waiting to test her resolve. Would she rise to meet them, or would she be swept away in the tides of competition? With an electric tension buzzing in the air, her next move awaited. How would she transform anxiety into action? Emily took a deep breath, her heart racing, as she switched back to her laptop. The spotlight of opportunity flickered before her, a fleeting chance to carve out her own space in the cacophony of industry innovations. Her fingers typed swiftly, constructing emails to potential collaborators who aligned with her vision of authentic storytelling. Each key press felt like a declaration, a step toward manifesting ideas into reality. As the clock ticked away, two thoughts divided her attention. The urgency of deadlines loomed, each passing moment accentuating the pressure from her team's expectations, while the vision of impactful storytelling beckoned her to dive deeper, to unearth hidden voices that could elevate her campaign. In that dichotomy, she wrestled against self-doubt. The notion of, what if, clawed at her resilience. What if it faced rejection? What if the stories didn't resonate? Yet, mindfulness emerged as a powerful ally. Emily concentrated on what she could control: her narrative, her choices, and the power of authenticity she wanted to instill in her campaign. She flipped through a mental catalogue of stories she had encountered over the years in her work and personal life. There was a woman in her neighborhood who had started a book club, nurturing bonds among the most diverse members, a young artist whose vision brought color to a bleak community space, and a single dad demonstrating resilience while juggling work and family life. These, she realized, weren't just stories, they were lifelines that could resonate with her audience, compelling them to connect. She leaned forward, her focus sharpening as she crafted her pitches, each one personalized and rooted in empathy. To avoid falling into the trap of superficiality, every email bore the weight of genuine intention. Emily discovered her own voice in the process, realizing that she had the power not just to share stories, but to become their steward and advocate for the vulnerable experiences that could stimulate real connections with the brand. An idea prompted by a sense of urgency sparked within her: she could launch a social media series ahead of the larger campaign. Short clips could tease the stories while inviting the audience to share their own experiences. It would be interactive, a community driven by narrative, a two-way street of story sharing that would engage rather than simply broadcast. It could allow her to gauge audience resonance in real time and tweak her strategy as needed. It was risky, yet it reflected the authenticity she craved. With her morale buoyed, she reached for her phone, determined to enlist the support of her network. The realization surged through her: this was the moment to test not just her creative approach, but also her ability to navigate a transformative landscape defined by active connection rather than passive consumption. But just as she began to compile her contacts for outreach, her phone rang. The name that flashed sent a pang of anxiety surging through her gut. It was Darren, her boss. Their last conversation had been a furious clash of perspectives, driven by metrics and the impending deadlines that seemed to warp every day into a blur of scrutinized productivity. Gripping the edge of her desk, a whirlwind of thoughts swirled around her ambition and vulnerability. Would he challenge her vision? Would he lean on the statistics, dismissing her passionate plea for innovation? Emily, Darren's voice pierced through the static of her own thoughts, laden with a sense of urgency. We need to talk about the campaign. I've been hearing unsettling things from upper management regarding our outreach strategy, particularly after that news update. Are you ready to align with the team's traditional goals, or will this take us off course? Defiance stirred within her. This was not just another conversation, it was an opportunity to stand firm in her resolve and communicate her vision. But the thought clawed at her: could she balance the demands of her superior while pursuing a path she believed in? Or was she risking everything on the precarious foundation of authenticity? She took a steadying breath, a moment for the tension to surface. Now was the time to harness her fear and uncertainty. As she answered, the strength of her voice felt like a bridge connecting her aspiration with her professional responsibility. Darren, I believe we can achieve both, fusing what the team is used to with a fresh perspective. It's crucial that we adapt and evolve, not just replicate, she stated, her voice stronger than she felt. The silence on the line deepened, a suffocating pause before the inevitable rebuttal. Emily braced herself, sensing that the upcoming exchange would not merely test her ideas but also the very foundation of her career. What happens next could define more than just this project, it could redefine you, she thought. Would resistance forge her path, or would the safety of that resistance become a cage? Darren's silence felt weighted, as if he were measuring the value of her words against the relentless metrics that had dominated their previous conversations. Emily's pulse quickened, her mind racing to evaluate the risks of her honesty. Would he see her understanding of the evolving landscape as visionary insight or reckless audacity? "Emily, let's cut to the chase," he finally said, his tone sharper than she anticipated. "Your vision is ambitious, but the reality is that we have targets to hit. Upper management is keen on results, and we cannot afford to deviate from the formula that's worked in the past." His words crashed into her, but something within her hardened. Emily could feel the dissonance echoing between them, the clash between innovation and convention unfolding in real time. She had spent years observing the industry cling to outdated practices, branding that felt insincere. "I understand the pressures, Darren," she spoke, willing her voice to stay steady despite the tremor of anxiety. "But maybe that's why we're falling short. Our audience craves authenticity and connection. If we don't adapt, we risk losing their trust entirely." Silence descended again, and she could almost visualize the gears turning in Darren's head, a clash of strategy and instinct battling for dominance. Internally, Emily wrestled with her next move. Would he see fear in her eyes if she pushed harder, or would he recognize her resilience as an asset? "Look, I hear you," Darren replied, but his tone hinted at skepticism. "I really do. But what you're proposing is a gamble. We need to weigh the risk versus potential reward carefully, especially now with the upcoming metrics review." A gamble. The word reverberated in Emily's mind. She still thought of her previous hesitations. The voice of her own self-doubt returned to whisper, "What do you know about gambling with your career?" Yet amidst those shadows, clarity emerged. Every great leap forward begins with the bravery to break away from the norm. What if her gamble was the very thing that could elevate the brand into a new narrative landscape? What if this was the moment she could catalyze real change, not just for herself but for those stories she intended to share? "Then let's redefine what that looks like," she responded, her voice stronger now, cocked and loaded with conviction. "Let's use this campaign as a case study. I propose we create this social media series not only to engage our audience but also to generate quantifiable results. We can analyze the engagement metrics in real time, proving that authenticity garners genuine interest." Her heart was in her throat, and she held her breath as she awaited his response. Would Darren appreciate her initiative, or would he see it as a radical departure, a signal of insubordination? "Interesting," he finally replied, and Emily could feel the slight shift in his tone. "The idea has potential, but you'll need to be ready to pivot should the initial results not align with what we expect. That's non-negotiable." The first thread of relief washed over her. His begrudging interest opened a window to make her vision a reality. "I can manage the uncertainty," she reassured, her determination crystallizing. "This is about finding a balance. Let us approach it as both exploration and evaluation." As they wrapped up the call, an electric current of possibility surged within her. It wasn't just a step forward, it was a challenging leap into a realm where storytelling might intersect with hard data. Emily had not only defended her vision but had also crafted a pathway to intertwine it with the cautious expectations of executive oversight, and yet, a question lingered, gnawing at her resolve: was she ready for the scrutiny that would inevitably follow her innovation? As the day edged toward dusk and ideas flooded her mind, she couldn't shake the anticipation shadowing her own growth. Determined to fine-tune her strategy, Emily opened a blank document, poised to map out her vision. But just as she began typing, a headline flickered across her newsfeed: a young girl's emotional plea to a CEO seeking help for her ailing mother. The word struck her like a lightning bolt. What if personal narratives held the power to spark change on a broader scale? Could they be a catalyst not just in her campaign but in her own development as a storyteller? In an instant, a daring new direction began to take shape in her mind, one that could amplify her efforts and challenge the corporate landscape even further. But first, she needed to harness this surge of inspiration, channel it into something actionable. As she read the poignant headline once more, a realization dawned: she was standing at the forefront of not just her journey but at the cusp of something profoundly larger. Would she take the leap into this uncharted story of resilience, igniting a new pulse in her campaign with it? The decision lay ahead, teasing the brink of her potential as she prepared to explore what authenticity could truly mean. Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard, the pulse of her heart echoing the urgency of the moment. The headline brimming in her mind wasn't just an emotional draw, it was an opportunity to align her campaign with real human stories that communicated struggle and triumph and connected with her audience on a visceral level. With every letter she typed, she intentionally shaped the narrative framework of her campaign. What if the stories she told served not only to drive engagement but to build bridges with her audience? She began to sketch a structure that centered around individuals facing genuine challenges, infusing their truths into corporate messaging without losing the essential quality of authenticity. As Emily brainstormed, she envisioned a series of videos showcasing real-life stories, people facing hardships, dreams deferred, and challenges met with resilience. These would serve double duty. While they would undoubtedly attract attention, they would also offer insight into how the company's products or services could truly support those in need. The juxtaposition of personal struggle and corporate empathy could redefine the brand's narrative, positioning the company as a compassionate force in people's lives. But with this bold idea came the inevitable weight of dread. Was she equipped to present such poignant, raw narratives to her audience? The risk of misrepresentation loomed large. Inadequately sharing someone's pain for the sake of marketing could become a profound ethical dilemma. She found herself grappling with the implications of broadcasting such intimate stories while retaining respect for individuals' experiences. Sitting back in her chair, Emily took a deep breath. This wasn't merely a creative exercise, it was a test of her own values. To launch such a campaign, she couldn't just treat these narratives as content. She needed to be a steward of the stories she hoped to tell. This realization anchored her determination and shifted her thought process. If she was going to embrace this power, she needed to tread carefully, developing a sensitive yet impactful approach that could resonate. Merging authenticity with corporate responsibility, she whispered to herself, her thoughts swirling with the possibilities. As she drafted a proposal for the campaign, she also established a clear outline for the selection process, one that would keep the integrity of the narratives intact while ensuring her vision wouldn't be diluted by corporate red tape. With the proposal taking shape, anxiety crept back into her mind. What would Darren think of this approach? Would he see it as the next logical step or another gamble with the potential to backfire? She closed her eyes, envisioning their discussion, resenting her agitation over the thought of his judgment. What if he doesn't understand the value of this? But her resolve hardened again. Standing at this threshold required her to embrace vulnerability, not only in the stories she intended to showcase but also in her ability to defend her vision against potential opposition. She needed to present compelling data and emotional weight to win him over. Drafting the proposal was more than just a task, it felt like a personal manifesto edging her toward the woman she aspired to become, a bold innovator unafraid to challenge industry norms. As the words flowed onto the screen, she felt a growing surge of empowerment. It was a small yet significant shift within her, fueled by a commitment to authenticity and connection. This campaign could serve as a testament to her evolution, a narrative that encompassed both individual growth and collective impact, albeit in the confines of her professional life. As she saved the document, an unexpected determination washed over her. Emily was ready to take her ideas into the world, to challenge conventions, and to bound towards the larger narrative that awaited her. Just as she was about to hit send, a text notification flashed on her phone, an unexpected message from Darren. With a mix of anticipation and trepidation, she opened the message, her heart racing as she read the words that would determine the next step on her journey. "Can we meet tomorrow? I have some questions about this new campaign you're proposing." What questions did he have? Would he embrace this reshaped vision, or was he merely setting the stage for hesitation? The uncertainty tugged at her, pulling her back into the fray, as she prepared to confront the very core of her ambitions. The following day, Emily stood before the mirror, fixing her hair, as anticipation swirled in her chest. A few weeks earlier, she had entered Mr. Johnson's office in the throes of desperation, yet here she was about to walk into another meeting armed with newfound skills and determination. This was the pivotal moment she had been striving towards, a chance to not only solidify her place at the company but to forge a narrative that prioritized authenticity and connection. As she walked into the conference room, the bright overhead lights cast a spotlight on her. Across the polished table, Mr. Johnson sat, a stack of her proposals in front of him, his expression unreadable. The stakes felt higher than ever. "Emily," he greeted her, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I appreciate you coming on such short notice." "Of course," she replied, steadying her breath. After opening with pleasantries, he dove straight into the topic at hand. "Your proposal is ambitious. I see you want to infuse genuine narratives into the campaign. Tell me how these stories will translate to our audience," he questioned, his brows slightly furrowed yet tinged with curiosity. This was her moment. Emily felt the weight of expectation, but rather than retreating, she leaned into it. "By highlighting real-life stories that reflect struggles and triumphs, we create a space for empathy. Each narrative will offer our audience a chance to connect, not merely as consumers but as contributors to a larger dialogue," she explained, her voice steady, passionate. She continued, backing her vision with insights derived not just from her research but also from her own evolution in a fast-paced world of marketing. "We can showcase how our brand stands alongside people facing challenges, helping them overcome obstacles while demonstrating our core values." Mr. Johnson considered her words, his demeanor shifting slightly as curiosity replaced skepticism. "And you believe this will lead to measurable results?" Emily took a breath and nodded thoughtfully. "Yes. By connecting through true stories, we humanize our brand. If we can prove through analytics that emotional engagement leads to higher customer loyalty, then we justify the risk, turning potential doubt into enthusiastic support." For the first time, she saw a flicker of excitement in Mr. Johnson's expression. "I'm intrigued," he said slowly. "But let's talk logistics. What is your timeline, and how do you plan to execute this without overwhelming your team?" Drawing from the framework she had sketched out last night, Emily outlined a step-by-step approach. She looked him in the eye, conveying her readiness to embrace accountability. "We will start with a smaller pilot project, recruiting just a few impactful stories to see how they resonate. We'll utilize targeted metrics to track engagement, feedback, and conversion rates before expanding." With each point she made, the deep-seated fear that had once paralyzed her began to melt away, replaced with confidence she had yet to embrace fully. Each challenge was now an opportunity. The air between them pulsed with potential. Mr. Johnson nodded thoughtfully, weighing her proposal against the calculated risks inherent in every marketing strategy. "All right, Emily. You've shown commitment and thoughtful preparation," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Let us move forward with your pilot plan, and I expect regular updates." "Absolutely, thank you," she exclaimed, the rush of victory coursing through her veins. It wasn't just about getting a project approved, it was about seizing her voice, owning her narrative, and wielding it with purpose in a professional landscape that had initially felt daunting. As she left the meeting, a whirlwind of exhilaration swept over her. All the hours spent laboring over strategy and self-doubt had culminated into this moment of approval and recognition. She was not just another girl asking for a chance, she was a budding leader, anchoring her vision with solid rationale and a clear sense of direction. Each step back to her desk felt lighter, buoyed by the undeniable truth that she had embraced her vulnerability and transformed it into strength. The threads of her story hadn't just intertwined with Mr. Johnson's vision but had begun to weave together a narrative of collective empowerment, driving her further into a space that reflected not just her skills but her heart. Hours later, as she put the finishing touches on the proposal for the pilot campaign, an email notification burst onto her screen. It was a reply from her mother, who had been eagerly awaiting updates. "I'm so proud of you. Keep fighting," it read. Reading those words filled Emily with a sense of purpose. With the reassurance of her own journey behind her, she was finally positioned to conquer not only the demands of her professional life but also clear the hurdles that lay in the wake of personal strife. Armed with confidence and resolution, she realized her story, stitched together through tenacity and passion, would not only elevate her brand but also echo a message of hope and resilience to all those who felt voiceless. This was the moment Emily knew she had transformed from a girl seeking help to a force within her industry illuminating the power of authenticity. Now, with her campaign outlined, she prepared to take the next steps boldly. And to you watching this transformative journey, remember that every story matters. Don't just scroll by. You need to subscribe now to witness the journey of those like Emily and more. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure stories of triumph reach even further. Comment your reactions and theories about Emily's incredible journey of growth, and lastly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and inspiration. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.